So welcome to Half-Hearted. My guest today is the person who introduced me to the comedy scene in Toronto. He owns the only black-run comedy club in the city.
Yep.
And arguably, I think one of my favorite places to do comedy. He runs Word Entertainment. His venue, The Lab, has been selected as like a JFL venue.
Yep.
He's got a show coming out called Douche Rehab. And I don't know what else to say other than I really appreciate you. Give it, Danton Lamar. I always say give it up as if anybody else is here. But Danton Lamar, and just thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here. Happy to see the progression you've made from like day one backyard, like fucking random ass open mics to like, established in the scene. People know your name, having a podcast that people actually want to be on. Like it's good.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, like we were talking earlier, like you got to be fully committed to this.
Yeah.
And I so I think that's a great place to start, which is that did you know
the being all in?
No. Let's talk. I want to talk about that backyard show. Did you have any idea what you were walking into when you? We won't name names, but we did. The first show I ever did was in a backyard that you invited me to, and let's just say it was full of characters.
Yes, it was full of characters, many of whom are not in the scene anymore, or are not in my portion of the scene.
Or welcome in the scene.
Yeah, like okay. So I mean, to paint the picture for y'all, this was pandemic times. Like we weren't supposed to be having mics, and so I, being the comedy fiend that I am, couldn't handle just doing Zoom shit, especially when I heard that there was a live mic happening. Now, I had been to this mic twice before, and I knew the den of just ineptitude. I'm not ineptitude. That's definitely
iniquity.
Wrong. Yeah, it's just it was a dank den of despair. Like it was a crazy place because like it was where a lot of the alt-right guys were hanging out at the time because it was also the only spot. But they were the ones because they were doing it inside.
Yes.
Before. And like I went to one inside and was like, this is weird because you're just in some dude's living room.
Yes.
And it smelled like dog. It was weird. I loved the memorabilia all over the place. This is giving a lot of hints as to what it is, but like,
well, first of all, I thought I again, without naming names, the guy whose place it is, the host, I think was an incredibly sweet guy.
Oh, he was a really nice dude,
right? And but it was definitely a weird vibe, but at the same time, at least for my first mic ever, I had the thought in my head, like, if this is the competition, I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Which at the time that was like, it was crazy because it was, you came in first day, got laughs, like you had well-structured stuff, like already off the bat. And so it's like a lot of people were like, oh, who is this guy? Like, thought you were coming from out of town doing stuff and you're just like visiting for a minute. Like everybody finding out that it was your first night, just like, oh shit. Like,
yeah. I feel, especially at the beginning, I felt like I really stuck out like a sore thumb. Like I had the stink of a life.
Well, yeah. You were like, oh, like everybody's coming in and like seeing you first, and they're just like, so, because like you didn't present as a complete newbie. So, because I mean, first off, like, because a lot of newbies are like, there can be people who are charismatic, they can be funny, right? But very few people come in already thinking joke structure.
Okay.
And so, like, older comics could see that, like, there was intention with every word in your jokes and being like, huh.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, where did he get that? Like, if he's just in the game, because like a lot of comics, you come into this shit, and like some people do they do take the courses, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you could do the whole Humber situation, but a lot of people don't. Right?
No.
And so it's just like, oh, how did you figure that out so fast? And it's like, well, there are resources.
Yeah, there is stuff. Yeah, there is stuff out there, and I don't want to dwell on that too much. But I thought like it's such a. I love being able to say that. I love being able to say, like, I started in backyards.
Yeah.
I started in backyards when it was, like, illegal to gather.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna do this because it's my podcast. So you're from the States, and I know that you're from Massachusetts. Is that where you're from originally?
I mean, that's where I spent most of my time growing up. Like, I was born out west, but like I grew up in Massachusetts.
And by out west, like
Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like but the thing is like really formative years, everything that actually mattered, Massachusetts. Like we bounced around a fair bit when I was really small, but Mass was home.
Okay.
And so like that was where my sister grew up. Like I went through, that was where I did pretty much all my schooling. Was Massachusetts until university, and then I went to upstate New York. So yeah, Mass is home. It's interesting being here and from Mass, because like there's so many similarities. Our weather is very similar.
Yes.
Like it's basically the same longitude, like, or latitude, whichever one.
I think in some ways because your proximity to the ocean, like Boston in particular, you get harsher winters.
Yeah.
Then even Toronto, I think we're relatively sheltered from some of that. It's not to say that Canada doesn't have bad winters. We do, but there's that added thing of like hurricanes that we don't have here.
Well, I mean, yeah. Boston. Oh no, Boston's pretty good for that because like there aren't that many hurricanes that come that far north. Now, yeah, the winter is honestly like there isn't as much snow in Boston, right?
Okay.
But like Western Mass usually gets hit with a fair bit, which is where I grew up. Now, what is funny here is because like, here, Toronto, even like, the Niagara area, all this side of the lake, like we get snow, but it's not as bad, right? And then as soon as you look across and like, you got like the other side of Niagara, Buffalo, all that shit, like they get, like, cause the way the wind currents work on the fucking continent, the wind blows south.
Was it last year that Buffalo got completely covered?
Yeah. Well, like they get the lake effect for the snow. Yeah. And like we're far enough away from all that. Like where I grew up was like we're just like in a valley. So snow would just like get trapped there. But like it wasn't like, just droves of basically just freezing air off of a lake just dumping on your city. Like,
yeah, we're Canadians are watching Buffalo on the news being like, who lives in igloos now?
I mean, yeah, because it was brutal. And that's one of those things I'm like, all right, I like Toronto. I like living, in the north, but I can't wait to be somewhere warm.
Yeah.
Rather consistently, at least do warm weather winters.
I want to get into that because you're a very well-traveled guy, and I want to get into that. But so what was your family like growing up though?
Growing up, we were fun. I mean, like small town Massachusetts. My parents were from like the South / the West, so it was an interesting mix there. But we would try to do church every once in a while. I like
that you went there first.
Yeah, like we would go because I know the theme of the podcast. I'm like we would go in phases, in and out, and then, but like we. Because like my parents, so my dad like is from Florida, and that's where my parents met. And then when I was born, like we went out to the West, because that's where my mom's mom was, like my grandma, and so she wanted to be there. And then my parents were like, "Fuck it, we don't want to we don't want to be near either of our parents."
Okay.
So it's like where could we go that's far from both of them? And so they were like, well, they're not going to come to the cold. So they went to Massachusetts.
Okay. And maybe you can help inform me on this one, because I feel like Americans are very like cool with moving.
Oh yeah.
Moving far.
Yeah.
Moving far from everything they know. Doesn't like they'll just go. Yeah. And maybe it's a Canada thing, and like this is Toronto arrogance coming out, but like I feel like living in Toronto, the only place we really even consider going is Vancouver.
I mean, well, you are, yeah.
But like otherwise, there is no better place to be, at least in our arrogant eyes, and so it's like you don't really think about leaving unless it's to go to the States.
I mean, which is very true because there's not much to leave for,
Yes, yeah.
But the thing is, across the states, there's so many places that are basically just par. It's like moving from a mid-tier city in the States to another mid-tier city anywhere else in the States is like, if other than, you know, a slight change in diet, it feels like you didn't really go that far.
Okay.
You know? And like, because so many people are used to growing up in a city that's basically the size of like Peterborough or fucking even something like Kingston, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's 50 Kingstons across the U.S.
Yes.
Size wise. Mm-hmm. So it's like if you move from one of those to another, it
doesn't really matter, but at least one might have a job for you or something. Okay.
And so like there's the willingness to just be like, well, because like you know, in America, people talk about like there's so much to see, there's so much crazy diversity in America and like that, like, and there is a lot of like landscape difference and like the way people are is a bit different, you know, changing throughout the country, but it's all still America.
Yes.
Like no matter where you get off a plane, it still feels like America. Like that's just what it is. So it's like, you know that. You know, no matter where you go, you'll still be able to find a cheeseburger someplace that sells you an apple pie. Like, you know, it's just like you're gonna get the same shit everywhere.
Yeah. Just be careful. You got some rubbing sound on your face with the mic. A fist away is good.
Sweet,
yeah, you're good. Yeah, I think that because have you ever heard of Peter Zion?
I feel like I know the name.
He's a guy who he works in like demographics and stuff like that. And so when he has like commentary about, you know, geopolitics and things like that, and he was saying regarding Canada that there is no single Canada. Yeah. There's like an Ontario, there's a Quebec, there's an East Coast and BC, and then the middle, the
flyover part.
Yeah, and so and basically each of those, you know, 5, you know, districts has its own relationship to the U.S. that it depends on economically. And I thought that really rang true in the sense of like, I don't feel particularly Canadian. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, coming here, you know, that was one of the things that like my partner and I tried to really wrap our head around when we got here. Is like, what is it to be Canadian? Like, what are y'all? Y'all? And like, so many people would try to compare, like, especially Toronto to like other major cities, and it's like, no, just tell me about Toronto. Stop trying to tell me it's New York but different. Like, it's not.
No, we're not.
It's not a combination of New York and Chicago. It's not. Like, it's its own thing. But like, people have so much trouble defining what it is because Toronto, and for the most part, Canada, never really got limelight.
No.
And I mean, it's hard when you're standing next to, you know, a hulking behemoth known as America, like that just loves throwing its weight around. Like you're gonna be the little brother all the time. But like,
well, and we don't have enough going on here to warrant the limelight because like it's for the very same reason why comics in Canada have to go to the US to make it.
Yeah.
Because there is no way to make it here. There's no stage big enough.
Yeah.
To make it.
And what the crazy thing is, and like one of the things I'm trying to change here is like everything is made here. Everything for downstairs is made here. So
tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, like all of the major production content for like TV shows, film, for anything that's mostly set in America, unless it's massive budget, is shot here. And even if it is massive budget, they save on that being shot here. Like, and the thing is like Canada has great talent, and like Canada sends great talent across the border all the fucking time. But there's no real, like, the difference between, like, the way I see it, like the difference between upstairs and downstairs here is like downstairs in the US, like we have too much pride in everything that's American. Canada, like y'all are happy to be Canadian, but y'all don't give a fuck about what Canada actually puts out.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. At the same time, you'll see all these interviews that can't, like, I noticed this because I grew up with much music. And so every time an American celebrity is interviewed, like, what do you think about Canada? It's like we always want that, like, validation.
Yeah.
When, like, really, I don't think we need it.
No.
We don't need it. We can just, like, do our thing.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like Canada coming at all of this from more of a place of confidence and feeling like they belong. Because so much of the industries here feels like they're riding the American coattails, which is definitely the way America wants it. It's beneficial for us. It keeps the markets cheap, and it keeps y'all hungry for whatever we want to do over here.
Yes.
But as soon as Canada's like, hey, we can make our own shit, All right.
Yes.
You need us. And it's like we still want to work with you, but we also need a little more respect.
Yeah.
And like that comes from a lot of different things, you know, because that comes from like the deals that comedians get for doing shows here, right? That comes with like the royalty packages that people are allowed to put together, and like because there's no real star system in Canada, which is one of the things like you'll hear a lot of comics talk about. Is like that's why you have to leave, because you can't become a star here. There's no way to make that and earn the name to be on, you know, a fucking stadium tour going through Canada. Like Canada does have stadiums and you could do a stadium tour, but like you're not filling them with Canadian comics because most Canadians don't really know who they are unless they've gone to America.
Yes, to get the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. That was a good segue. So growing up, was it just you and a sister?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're 9 years apart.
Oh, wow. Which one? Who was the accident?
I was the accident.
Okay.
Yeah. No, like she was. I mean, she was the happy accident that brought them back together. I guess, you know, it was a while.
Okay. Oh, are you oldest?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they weren't together. Oh, that's. Oh.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, so basically, it went. They were together. Then I happened, and then they were like, took some time apart, and then basically they like kind of were thinking about getting back together, and then my sister happened. They were like, "Well, we're doing it." Yeah.
Okay. And then, first of all, that's got to be rough to be like. So I wasn't enough to want to be together.
I mean, I was fine with it. I like my mom and I were having a lovely time.
And was this in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Okay. So what place? How much of it? Which of your parents was the most like church happy?
My dad. My dad.
Your
was
dad
definitely. He was because he had happy memories of the church. He grew up in the South. He was going to Black Baptist churches. You know, so it's big community, big fun. You know, big potlucks every weekend, and like it was like a cornerstone for his childhood community. And like that's one of the things he always remembered about it, is trying to get back that feeling of being in a group that actually, you know, does want the best for you, you know, and they want to see you every weekend, and they want to know what's going on in your life. And like you don't get that in a lot of different things, even though you can find a lot of community in a lot of other places. One of the things about religious communities is that it is so wholesome, right? Like people do generally want the best for you there, and that's something that like once you've had it, it's hard to replace in other ways, you know?
It's the thing that I hear over and over again from the people who have left the church community, is that the community is what they miss the most.
Yeah.
And that you have this thing where you're invested in each other's lives, and it's everything that you do is centered around these moral principles. Yep. And so I'm just fascinated by differences. So like I'm gonna ask all the ignorant questions. Sure. I hope that's okay. But like I think you've been to both. How are black churches different from white churches?
I mean, well, there's obviously a myriad of black churches.
Yeah, and I don't want to lump them all together, because I went to, and I'll talk about it after, but like I went to a black church in New Jersey once, so that was, you know, what you would expect. Yeah. So, but I want to hear hear about it from your perspective.
I mean, the general like differences that I have found, because I've been to like a bunch of different varieties of black and white churches, and like I will say, music's generally better at a black church. If there's usually a potluck after service, and there's going to be at least 2 new aunties trying to talk to you if you just came for the first time.
Okay, yeah,
I feel like, though both places are welcoming, black churches tend to be a bit more welcoming. Mm-hmm. At least I found that, like, I was mainly going to black churches across the north. Like, I did go to some in the south when I was visiting family and stuff. We were already with people. Like, it wasn't, because like there's an experience of arriving to a church for the first time, and you know, being brought there by people.
Yes,
you know, so. Because like when you just arrive, everybody's like, "Oh, you know, hey, join the family. Did you have fun? Do you want to come back? You know, let's get your email, like all that stuff."
Yeah, it's almost like being swarmed.
Yeah. And so like the who approaches you is different, because like, you know, that there's always like a couple old ladies, like black old ladies that are on the church get to know people council.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
like,
They have the gifting of chat and like of extroversion.
Yeah, so they're gonna come over and they'll do the basic entrance interview, like get all your information. But like, yeah, I don't know, like, because like white churches they are fun in their own way, but like, I don't know, especially when you get one that like a black church that's very much about like the singing, like the actual getting up out of the chairs and dancing around. Those are like, that's a fucking spectacle. Like you go to that and it's just like, oh, I see how you could turn this into a mega church. Like it's like I don't know if it's the Holy Ghost I feel or if it's just being swept up in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like black churches are they're an experience.
Yeah.
Because like it to somebody who's only done white church, it seems like absolute chaos. Like I went to a black church in Toronto once, and the pastor basically gave a sermon to summarize, we have other pastors, you can leave me alone a little. And then everybody surrounded him and started like praying for him, and he just started, he was going, transfer. I had no idea what transfer meant in the context of it, and like I was just like watching from a distance, like, what is happening? And then I went to the one in New Jersey, and the black pastors have the throne, right? Yep. The big chair, and it's like So I went to New Jersey for like a missions trip to help in Camden.
Oh. Bang, bang.
Yeah. I think Camden has competed with like South Central for like #1 highest crime rate in America.
Yeah, Camden, Trenton, all of that's always been pretty high.
Yeah. And I remember being at this black church, and like and you have to keep in mind that my religion, like when I went to Camden, New Jersey on this like mission trip, I had been a Christian for like a year or something like that. So I'm new to church, period. Yeah. And I'm like watching all, like thinking, this is nuts. And then like there's this kid, the black kid I make eyes with, and he looks at me, and it's like we talked in our minds, like, yeah, this is nuts. Like he thought it was nuts too. I could tell.
Well, because I mean, if you're not from it, like it takes a minute to get into it.
Yeah.
Because like that, and the thing is like we never went to any church regularly enough to like call it my church home. But yeah, like there are some where it's like we would go more regularly than others, right? Like there was one big church we would go to Springfield, in Springfield, Mass. It was like this big black church. It would take us an hour to get there, which is why I was just like, wow.
Oh.
Like, yeah. So like as a kid, I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like I am dressed up to sit in the car for an hour to go sit, like, and then I'm gonna go listen to him for like 3 hours, and then we're gonna have to ride an hour back, and like we might not even stop for food. Like it's just crazy. So. Like, but that one, like, it definitely took some getting used to, because like, yeah, they would, whenever it was time for him, like shit was rocking.
Yeah,
and then occasionally, somebody would catch the Holy Spirit and fucking start speaking in tongues and shit. And I'm just like, what?
Oh my God. And
in the hell?
Well, and that's the other thing. Like I heard about the concept of speaking in tongues. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding? And then like, I presume you watched the Borat movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember when he goes to the church towards the end, and it's like a white charismatic Pentecostal church, and it's like grown men in like suits, and they're like sprinting through the aisleways and like going like this. I'm like, this is the guy who sells me insurance, right? Like,
yeah,
right. Like it's the way, I don't know. There's something about it that even though, I was like into Jesus and like into God, there's something culty about some of this. So where did you so as a kid, what did you make of it? Like from a spiritual perspective, did you like believe in a God? Like what did you make of church and God and stuff like that?
Well,
at least at the beginning.
When I was a kid, I remember, because like every church, they do tithes and offerings, right? And then I noticed another difference for pretty much every black church. There's tithes and offerings, right?
Yes.
And then there's the building fund.
Oh.
There's always a fucking building fund. They're always trying to put a new wing on the church, get the air conditioner fixed, fucking build a new church, something.
Yes.
So there's always an extra thing that they're getting money from you for, which I thought was interesting. Because I'm like, but you're supposed to be able to do everything with the tithes and offerings. If the money's coming into the church, why are you asking for second money? You know what I'm saying? Like that was my first thing. That was like, this seems weird.
So there was a hint of suspicion always.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like I was just like I was always standoffish from like when I started realizing that was a part of it. And then I was lucky enough, like I went to boarding school and like I took a couple of theology courses, and I was able to just like study religions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of gave me a view. I was like, oh, okay, so like the three majors as we see them,
yes.
you know, all based off the same book. It's like, all right, so that's the same guy, just three different versions. Like
variations.
Yeah, it's just like variations of the same thing, you know? And it's just like, all right, so you just choose a different book to talk to the same God.
Yes.
Like that's all it is. And then I was like, all right. And then you look at like Buddhism and, you know, stuff like that. And like Taoism, even like, not even though it's like a really religion, but like it's, you know, it's still a way of living. Mm-hmm. And so like I started just looking at all of them. Right. And like being like, all right, so like a religion at its core, you know, one of the better things that it's supposed to give you is tenets to live by, you know, kind of guiding principles to go through the world with.
Sure.
You know, and it's like, all right, that's not bad. You know,
yes.
As an idea, that's not bad. And then, like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, all right, so I'm like picking and choosing because I'm like, you know, whatever. Like, if it's all the same God that's running heaven, as long as I'm doing good, it seems like I should be able to get in.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and it's like as long as I'm not out there murdering people and trying to bring betterment into the world as much as I can and make sure that people around me are actually living a good and happy life, I should be good.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. That was my takeaway.
How old would you have been when you were like doing this kind of studying and kind of looking at it
this
for
was
yourself?
Like teenage years.
Okay.
So like the main crux of this was like between 16 and 18. Mm-hmm. Because like the real theology course that like I really, because like I got to go. I was taking like a religious studies and like sociology course almost, but we got to go to South Africa.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so one of the cool things that we did there was we got to go to different places of faith there. And so like we went to a fucking black mega church, like 10,000 people at service mega church. And then we went to a couple smaller churches, went to a synagogue, we went to like a Muslim temple and all this stuff. Like it was really cool because like I hadn't been, like I'd been in, like been in a synagogue and stuff like that, but like I'd never actually gone, you know, to like a Muslim place. You know? Like, I'd never seen that. And so it was interesting to like experience that and like kind of talk with the people there and be like, you know, what do y'all think about things? And like, yeah, so it was a really cool time to just be like, all right, so everybody's like at the core of it, everybody's just trying to be a better person. Like that, like you're trying to be like, yes, it's for God, but ultimately like it's for you because you want to get into heaven.
Well, and it's also a point about the fact, like when it says like in the book of Romans, where it says like the law's written on your heart, in the sense of like, unless you're a total psychopath, like you know when you mess up, right? You know when you're not doing the things you should be doing and doing things that you shouldn't, right? And so if you're committed to trying to improve on those, then you know you're moving forward.
Which like I was like, all right, cool. I don't need church.
Okay, and so you made it like a clean break. You were just like, I don't need to do this. And so do you have a concept of God, like, or do you even believe in that? Agnostic, like where do you land now?
I mean, like I have a concept of there's quite probably something more powerful than me out there. Do they care for actual religious practices anymore? I don't know. Like
I always, and that's I really resonate with, right? Like because I like part of when I found God through my mushroom experience, like I didn't commit him to any team yet, right? And so part of like the thing that kind of informed my research was the thought of like, if this is a God who's big enough to control the universe itself, then like why does he care about like specific locations? Right? Like that was the thing that always kind of got me, was that like whoever this God is, it's bigger than just like these individual little practices
Oh, yeah.
and stuff like that, and how many times you like, and I don't want to shit on anybody else's specific, like how many times you wash or how you grow your facial hair,
Yeah.
or the types of clothes you wear and things like that. Like I was just like, I really feel like he doesn't really care
Yeah,
about that as much, you know?
Not anymore. I mean, you know, maybe 2,000 years ago. Like,
Well, and
when the landscape was very different.
Well, and that's like, I don't know if you've ever heard, there's this, in progressive Christianity, specifically, there's this notion of the trajectory hermeneutic. Have you ever heard of that? Where basically, like, the reason why the law was so restrictive at the beginning was because we were that bad. And so it needed, like, 4,000 years ago, like, rape, pillage, murder, right? Like, that was how we were. And so with more rules, it started to constrain us and to tame us. And then over time, the laws loosen, and so we can embrace more freedom because we'll be better on our own without them. Does that make sense? So that's how a lot of Christians would justify like being okay with same-sex marriage, even though the Bible prohibits it, because the trajectory is moving towards freedom.
I mean, yeah, that's a nice way to take it. Well, because it's just like, yeah, you look at so many things, and it's like, especially, you know, they're all really old, and like you look at some of like these practices, and it's like, all right, that was just about health and safety. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, it's like for like Judaism and even Islam, don't eat pork. Yeah, it goes bad fastest. Like,
yeah, that's
like,
a real
it looks like
thing.
a filthy animal. Sure, like, yeah, I get it. You know, don't eat shellfish. They also turn really fast. Like,
yeah,
when you don't have, you know, means of storing things the way you do now, like, yeah, you fucking put a law as something that's handed down by God to make sure people fucking do it so you can keep people alive. Like, I do like that, because it's like, it does make sense, because it's like, yeah, back then, like, as a species, we were just savages. Like, we were just fucking running around, fucking everything up. And like, we weren't civilized. And so like, I get like these religions often were in like the bigger archetypes for the laws that, you know, guide today. And so they were kind of the first issuance of like, these are our laws that we all live by in this society because this is our religion.
Yeah, and then again, and that almost points back to the trajectory hermeneutic, which is like that from Old Testament to New Testament, you go from having like, the way that it's described is in the Old Testament you had civic laws because Israel was also a nation state, ceremonial laws because they were like how you worshipped the god, and then you had moral laws, right? Like things that are just right and wrong. And then moving towards the New Testament, you have like, it's just, we drop the civic and ceremonial, and then we just have moral. And that's why, like, it, you know, the Bible says like you submit to the laws of the country that you're in, right? And so that becomes laws for everyone.
No, and I mean, yeah, it's definitely something you could see as like a transition in like a map for a society. You know, it's like, these are our guiding principles, and it's like, you know, it's like a fucking a constitution, if you will.
Sure.
You know, especially like if you take it with that whole thing, it's like, it's a living document. You know, it's meant to change with time. Because like the stories, they have their principles, and those should be stood by, but like, yeah, the exact laws of then do not apply to now.
Yes.
Like, and I think that is the best way to take it, because like the people who are like, no, it's fact, that's how that's how God said, and it's like, yeah, but you don't do so many other things.
Yes.
So it's like you're picking and choosing, and that makes you way more of a hypocrite than if you were just to admit things have changed.
Yes, and that's definitely one of the things that has like brought me to where I am now, where it's like, you know, it says in 1 Corinthians that women should have their heads covered in church, and nobody does that, right? So, and we have some contextual way out of that, but gay people still can't be together, and it's like, oh, like how do you, right, and so. Yeah. It's like, how do I just love the person in front of me? That's kind of where I'm trying to go back to.
Well, it's like, it's funny because like even like most sections of Christianity, like, we're still not supposed to eat pork.
Well, yeah, some of them Seventh-day Adventists are still do the old law, and then like it's so weird because it's like it was Judaism, which was, you know, the God's plan to save the whole earth. It's like, I'm starting with you, but eventually it'll be for everybody. And then Christianity opens it up to everybody, but then Islam goes, actually you can't eat the food. We're narrowing it back down. Those foods are still bad, right? Yeah. And I don't know where I was going with that.
Didn't even smoke today.
No, I'm a month off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man.
Nice, yeah.
Back. Haven't you noticed how productive I've been? Totes. So around 18, like you're carving your own path. So then, like, moving away from like spiritual stuff. So how do you find out what you want to do? And like, did you consider university? I know like it's not subsidized in the U.S., so I don't know. Like,
well, yeah, no, I went to university. Still technically owe money for it.
Like in Massachusetts?
No, upstate New York.
Okay.
I went to a small school called Union.
Okay.
And it cost way too much money, but it was fun. It was fun 4 years of partying. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did you study?
Economics.
Oh, okay.
I studied economics with a minor in Spanish.
No wonder you're in Mexico so much.
Yeah, it's funny because like I studied Spanish, and right after graduating, I did go and like I was a substitute teacher for Spanish for a little bit. Substitute taught math and Spanish, which is and then fucked off to Asia and like lived in Asia for like 7 years where I never really could use Spanish.
Yeah, where did you go in Asia and why?
Why goes back to middle school. Just because like I was lucky enough, I went to private schools with some international students, and so they had come from like China, Korea, Japan, like a couple kids from Europe, a couple kids from the Bahamas, and I was like, yo, and like it's one of those things where it's like you see the map, you see a globe, but the world becomes so much more real when you meet somebody from somewhere else. And so, like, it was getting to know these kids from other places where I was like, I'm going to go visit your country. I'm going to go stay there. If I can, I'm going to live there. And so, like, I was mainly talking about Far East Asia, which I did do. Like, I spent 3 years in China, did about a year in Korea, and then, like, I gallivanted around Europe for a little bit. And, yeah, it was great. Like,
yeah. So China first.
Yeah, China first. Yeah. I was in China for a year. Loved it. Well, no. First 6 months, fucking hated it.
Why?
Well, like I landed, I did. If you're gonna move to China to teach English, don't do it this way. I landed in Beijing with $350 because I was like, all right, I've got the promise of a job and an apartment, and I was meeting up with one of my best friends who was already living there, and he already had a job, and he was staying at a place. And so I was like, all right, cool. Get there. Friends meet me at the airport. We go to the hostel that they're staying at, whatever. I go check in at the place that's supposed to be getting me a job in an apartment. Find out that they're like, yeah, we got nothing for you. Like, they did the work to get me a visa, and, like, I didn't pay them to do it because like they were supposed to get paid by the company that hired me. But the thing is, China's like racist. So
that's what I was gonna say. Is like, did they know you were black?
Like they knew, but they just did not think it would be as hard to find me a job as it was.
Oh, gotcha.
And so they were just like, it's not worth it. Like, and because it didn't cost them anything, all they had to do was send me a letter to like for me to do the rest of it so I could get my visa.
Yes.
So like there was really no skin off their back. Like they didn't lose anything.
But you did.
But I was like, I'm here. I have no prospects for a job and no prospects on a place to stay.
Yeah.
And $350.
So what'd you do?
I lived in a hostel for 6 months. And like while we were there, like it took me 3.5 months to find a job.
Okay.
And so that was like every day, every other day, going out, interviewing at places, trying to find leads. There were a couple times where like, because I wasn't the only one, a bunch of us were trying to find jobs. And there were a couple times where like I would go interview with like this Australian dude.
Okay.
We're the same age. I graduated from university. He didn't.
Yes.
I've worked with kids before. He hadn't.
Yes.
he was white and Australian.
Yes, he gets the job.
Like, and so like
Yes.
half the time, if we like, 'cause there were a couple times they brought us in to interview together, which is like strange.
Yeah.
First off, but then they would only pay attention to his answers, and I'm like, well, what the fuck did you even bring me in here for?
Yeah.
You know. But eventually, I found a place like because there are schools run by a bunch of different people. Like Beijing's a city with 30 million people.
Yes.
Like, there's 10,000 English schools in that city, so it's like it's ridiculous. But it was just a matter of finding one that was run by foreigners, and so I found one that was run by Canadians actually.
Okay.
And so, like, I was actually, when I was working there, I was working with a dude from Toronto and a couple from Ottawa.
Okay.
And then, like, a couple other, it was funny. I went all the way out there, found that job. And, like, those three were there. There was a dude who was, he was from, like, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a dude from 20 minutes away from where I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, that's great. That's great. When I went to New Jersey, there was like a guy who was like a full-time missionary there, and he grew up on the same street as me.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that crazy?
It
How
was like
small the world
like,
can be.
Yo, fuck. I mean, yeah, because like he was, yeah, it was nuts. They just to realize, like, oh, all right, so yeah, you know, sometimes we all get the urge. You know,
Yeah.
you just gotta dip. And I loved it out there after that first 6 months because like the first 6 months was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Took me a while to find the job, and by the time I did, like, 'cause I got there in June. So it was the height of summer.
Yeah.
Hot as hell, running around every day, trying to find a job. And like I found like there were a couple of jobs, like I would find a job and like I'd be there for like a week.
Yes.
I'd find a job and I'd be there for like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Right. Like, because companies would like hire me and then like a parent would complain. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
they'd hire me and then they'd just be like, oh, actually we're closing. Like, so it's just like it was a myriad of things of like why it took so long to
Yeah.
actually find a job. Like it wasn't like there was no traction, but it was just like running crazy. And so to subsidize my living at the hostel, because they weren't charging me the whole time.
Oh, okay.
And so basically after my first month there, like I knew the party scene pretty well.
Yeah.
And like the great thing about being a foreigner there at that time is like you didn't need that much money to party
Okay.
most of the time. Because like if you knew the right clubs to get into, a lot of them would just give you free drinks. Like, and then if you knew other clubs to get into, like it would just be like buy one get two, like
Okay.
kind of shit. So it's like it was easy to get wasted out.
It seems like alcohol is like so cheap everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, we tax the fuck out of it over here.
Jeez.
Like,
Yeah.
and we don't even use it for the right things. I mean, here I guess it might go a little to healthcare, but downstairs it definitely doesn't.
No.
Like, so it's like if you're like I think personally everybody should be able to do whatever your vice is, whatever you want to do it. Government should just be able to tax you for it, and that tax goes to paying for rehab.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
that's what it should be. Like I think every country should get more aligned with the Portuguese model, but
Yes.
like that's whatever. Like even look, it's like Portugal. They didn't even they decriminalized everything.
Well, they decriminalized it, but it wasn't just that. They didn't just let it like it wasn't just simple decriminalization. It was also like if your life is being ruined by this, it's like you're going to rehab whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
there.
and it's state funded rehab.
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
like that's the way. Like I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
It's like look, you know, it's in our best interest to make sure you don't die of this shit. Like,
Yeah, I mean, well, like, and then you see when it's not done, like what's happening in California and a lot of big cities where it's just it's gotten so significant that you almost can't be dealt with now. There's no amount of money you could throw at it. It's so big.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the amount of things that would have to change for a lot of these to kind of fit better, because like. I mean, it is like the argument of like the amount of money, right? And like I did study econ, and like I love saying this because it pisses off other econ people, but it's like you can just print more fucking money.
Yeah.
Like, money is fucking fictional. Like yes, we've built an economy around a lot of things, and yes, that has a lot of different things in motion, but it all only has weight because we believe it does.
Yes.
And so it's like if we stopped acting like money existed tomorrow, the sun's still going to rise and you're still going to need to eat. But like,
Yeah.
you know, like the thing that has been moving the world, like the global economy, just ceases to exist. And like, so a lot of people can't wrap their mind around the fact that it's like, there is money.
Mhm.
There can always be more money for whatever the government wants to do. because there's always money for war.
Yeah.
There's always money for war, but there's never money for like taking care of people to that extent.
Yeah.
And it's like, and people are like, but you know, where are we going to take it from? I'm like, all right, cool, fine. But like, we find money to house and feed and medically take care of people who have murdered people.
Yes.
But if somebody just got strung out or just lost all their money,
yeah,
they're fucked.
Yeah, it was always that contradiction of the fact that like getting caught with drugs was worse than the drugs themselves.
Yeah. Which it was always fucked. Like you're penalizing the wrong thing.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I was excited when Canada was going to legalize it, because I thought that like that's the first domino in people not going to jail for no reason.
True.
Right? Like that's what you want. But then you want that balance of like, because I do think that decriminalizing and leaving it at that is going to lead to abuse. And unless you have a structure in place to deal with addiction, like it's going to overtake you.
Yeah. And I think you do need structures in place, but the thing is like we've been so willing to ignore it.
Well, we don't invest in the structure.
Yeah.
We're like we'll do the easy part.
Yeah.
But we won't do the hard part.
Because like it's hard.
Yeah.
Like it takes figuring out, and it takes putting onus on people who don't want to take it. You know?
Well, and that's also the thing, right? Because I think it was this way in Canada. I'm not sure about the U.S., but it was like, you know, we let everybody out of institutions.
Yeah.
Or like it's against their rights to put them there, even if it's for their own good, right? And then it's like, well, how do you balance those rights? And that's a hard one. But I think like once you become a danger to even yourself, well, somebody needs to step in,
yeah.
right? Like,
and it's like if there's a proven track record of this, then it's like why
exactly?
Why I get it. If somebody, but like if somebody really can't tell why they're, you know, causing an issue,
yeah,
and like why they're not operating well within society, then yeah, like it's not the worst to be like, look, all right, you just need to be over here with some help.
Yeah,
like you don't need to be fully taken out, but like you do need assistance.
Yeah,
you know, and you do need somebody to check in on you and make sure that you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing to be able to be the best you, to be a part of society.
Yeah,
you know, and like it ultimately is better, because that's more people with jobs, you know,
yeah,
like people doing more things to actually like help society.
Well, it's the drain of it all, right? Like any homeless person that you see on the street, because largely like homelessness is the wrong word.
Yeah.
Addict is the right word, because it's like, you know, the single mom who's out on the street or the guy who's down on his luck, we have programs for them. Those people aren't going to be on the street for very long.
Yeah.
It's the people with a substance abuse issue who have burned every single bridge that they have.
Yeah.
Who have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Right. And probably the time and resources and energy that their own families and friends have put in to try to stop it has been astronomical. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, how can you stop that before it happens, before it even gets to that point? That's what needs to happen. But, you know, at the same time, it's like, have you ever seen those soft white underbelly videos? It's like a guy in LA, he like interviews people on Skid Row. And he's interviewed like thousands of addicts, and he was saying that, you know, it's like maybe 4% stop. It's like the ability to get people off of opiates in particular is just so difficult. It's like, what do you do? It's hard.
I mean, yeah, that shit. Like, opiates are fucking insane. Like, and it's one of those things where it's like we've gotten to a point with, you know, medical technology and like the drugs we understand, to where shit like, you know, fentanyl exists. Mm-hmm. And it's like, when that kind of shit can hit the market, and we're not watching every fucking, like, everybody who produces it is accountable, in my opinion. Because it's like,
absolutely.
Why is it going to anyone other than a pharmacy?
Yeah,
like
a hospital,
straight to a doctor's office, like, and then like, so why is it on the streets?
Yeah, well, because it's worth money, and the reason it's worth money is because it's illegal.
I mean, yeah. Like, and so it's like,
well, and the drug companies got everybody addicted to it 15 years ago.
Yes, it was quite convenient back then because they were just like, oh, here's a Percocet or an OxyContin for anything.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, have you ever had it?
Yeah,
it's like a warm hug.
It's
crazy. The first time I did Percocet because I had like a kidney stone issue, like I legitimately needed it.
Yeah,
and like, but that's how I described it. And then I would only hear, addicts call it a warm hug after. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, I've tried a couple different things, and like, they're all fucking crazy. And I'm like, I definitely see how you get trapped in it.
Well, it's crazy to think because with alcohol, like I can take or leave it. It's not really a big deal. But then it's crazy to me to think that somebody could have their first sip of alcohol, and that first sip was the beginning of the end of their life.
Yeah,
like it's nuts.
It is, and like there are some things where it's like it's slated against you, because like I personally, like, I know I have an addictive personality, so whenever I tried any of those things, I was like, I don't know where to get it, and I don't know, I don't know how to get more, and I intentionally don't want to, like, I've told people, don't tell me.
Yes.
So I'm like, I don't want to be able to get going with something like that.
Oh yeah, before weed was legal, and before like even the gray markets kind of started to pop up in Toronto, like if you had asked me where to get weed, even I would have been Craigslist. like that's like that would have been I would have had no idea where to go.
Yeah, and like I mean, for certain things, it's better to not know.
Yeah,
and like because with that shit, it's just like I've seen friends, good friends, lose the battle to both medical and non versions, and it's just like it is sad to see, because I mean, like one example is like there was a person who, I mean, quality of life was shit anyway because she had cancer, so like she needed it.
Yes,
but like there's also a fine line of needing it and jonesing. And like, like you never want to see somebody fucking spiders crawling, jonesing.
Yeah,
like that level of like watching somebody blow up on their partner kind of shit. Like you're just like, wow.
Yeah, or like watching the shuffle.
Yeah,
the shuffle. What is it? The 2-piece shuffle? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And then or even now the new thing is like when the zombies, just the people standing but gone.
Yeah, just fucking
crazy.
Zonked.
So from China, no, I just, you know what? I love taking the conversation where it goes. So like, we're good. So China, where do you go from there?
Well, yeah. So I did a year in China, and then
China.
Yeah, China. Fucking, I was out there. It was fun. I was in Beijing. Then I went and visited Korea because my friend who was in China with me had enough and like went to Korea, found a good job, and like so I went, visited, loved it, and decided I was going to come back later.
How is China? How are China and Korea different?
So many ways. Like their cities are both generally fucking massive.
Okay.
And like infrastructure is impressive in both. Korea's feels less scary.
Okay.
Well, because like with Korean infrastructure, you don't get videos of like an entire escalator disappearing. Like,
okay,
like that kind of shit would happen at a Chinese mall from time to time.
Okay.
Because like while I was living over there, like I wouldn't even find out about it. People would send me these videos. Like, this happened somewhere in China. Were you near there? And I'm like, that was fucking the other side of the country. Like,
so like
this place
like man-made disasters were more common. Okay.
Just like shit like that's crazy. Fucking. I mean, traffic is horrible in both. The smog is definitely worse in China. I'm sure it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be now. They were working very hard on it when I was there. But Korea's cleaner. Like it's funny because like I spent time in like China, Korea, and Japan, right? And so it's like it's interesting because like they all share history, and so. It's fun to see the OG China and then Like, because China, it's big, it's huge, it knows what the fuck it is, it's dirty and doesn't care.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, then you get to Korea, and Korea's like, hey, we're here, we're ultra modern, we're doing everything, everything's clean, like, society's really cool, everybody looks fuckable. Like, and then you get to Japan, and it's like, everybody is really polite, everything is so much cleaner, and, like, society is very well organized, and, like, because, you know, it's honestly, like, it's a scale of cleanliness, as kind of fucked up as it may sound, but it's like China, like, when I was there, you know, people didn't care where they threw the cigarette butts.
Yes.
It was common to see, like, kids with like split pants.
Yeah.
Like toddlers with split pants. You heard of these?
No.
Okay, so like toddlers, you know, when they're like around potty training age, whatever, they just run around in pants that don't have a crotch seam.
Okay,
right?
okay.
And so
that's what I assumed it meant. Yeah.
And so like they, like, whenever they're running around, like if they gotta go, they can just squat.
Yes. Okay.
Like,
wherever they are.
Wherever they are. And so like there's, you know, shit and piss all over the streets. And like it's not the main streets, but it's like any back street you're walking down, fucking watch your feet. Like, because it's not just the dog shit. Like sometimes it's toddler shit. Sometimes it's adult shit. Like,
do you have between the three? Do you have a preference?
Well, you know, dog shit is at least the most rational.
No. I meant the country, Stanton. That's so funny.
No, like I love them all for very different reasons. Because like I do love a grungy place, which is why I like Beijing.
Yeah,
like Beijing is like there are pockets of it that are glitz and glam, but as soon as you move 5 feet outside of that, it is grime and like I like the juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there is one, don't hide it from me.
Yeah,
you know, and like. I don't know. I like knowing. There's something weird about me where I like knowing there's a seedy underbelly around me. Like just knowing that there's a crime ring going on that I'm not involved in, but it's there.
Yeah,
it's just there. You know, it's doing things that I'm like, you know what? Like maybe I'll run into a guy. I don't know. I don't know. Like, you know.
You sound like my brother. My brher always likes the dank. He always wants there to be a little dank in it, right? You know? It's like he chooses Hamilton, right? He wants it.
Yeah. It's like, and like, it's a very particular kind of grime, and like, and with Korea, because like, it's not to say that there isn't organized crime in all three places, but how it's done is very different. Because like, you know, China, you could run into a certain bar and be like, oh, that's the fucking mob. All right, you know, like, whereas in Korea, Japan, you're not getting into that bar.
Okay.
Like, there's somebody to stop you before you get in. Whereas, like, China, depending on the place, like, you might be able to stumble in and they're going to look at you and be like, the fuck is this Lao-Wai doing?
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, there is that. Because, like, I've heard about people stumbling into, like, shit and they're just like, everybody looked and I got the fuck out. Like, but, like, I love Korea because, I don't know, Korea, it's got a very fun party culture. And, like, this is also being on the outside, you know, looking in. Because, like, you know, there's always, in being in all of these places, there is a huge difference between, you know, being a foreigner living there and being from there.
Yes.
Because, like, I don't have to deal with any of the actual societal pressures of being a part of any of those three societies.
God, you there's no obligation on your part to conform.
Yeah. Like, nobody expects me to do any of those things because I don't look like I should, you know? And, like, so it's, you get a certain bit of freedom, like, with that. And so, like, I liked the grime of China. I loved the drinking in Korea, like the drinking party atmosphere, and the food and just like the people of Japan.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
I feel like from what I've been presented with, having been to none of them, that like Korea's the most like North American.
Yeah, well, I mean,
is that true?
Well, since the Korean War, the U.S. has been giving them money.
Yes.
Right, and our bases have been there. We've just recently, in the past 5 years, started to pull out our bases from Korea, and so we've been there influencing them from time. Right.
Yeah.
And so like, it's fun to see because like you go to Seoul, right, and there's a district of the city called Itaewon.
Okay.
Right. And Itaewon, huge party district, but it was known as the foreigner party district.
Okay.
Because like it was closer to one of the bases, and so like there were a lot of Western themed bars. Like I remember going there, and there was a bar that we both loved and hated to go to because it would always be packed, but they had fucking beer pong tables. You could play flip cup. Right?
Yeah.
Like they had it was just pure Americana like decor all around it. Then there was another place that we used to go to called Ye Olde Opry.
Okay. Oh God. All right. Sounds very Korean.
Yeah. Right. Up on Hooker Hill, as one would.
Yeah.
And it was like this place. You walk in, fucking. It's a dive bar with like dollar bills all over the place, with like all the writing and all that stuff all over them. Like, so you feel like you walked into like a true American dive. Country music is playing. Fucking, you go to the bar and they hand you a bucket of soju and Kool-Aid.
Amazing.
Like, you're just like, yeah, this is a perfect bastardization of the two. And so yeah, like it is definitely the most American because it was the most receptive to it.
Yes.
I mean,
okay.
I don't know. Like a fair portion of it was like, hey, we're just going to keep giving you this money with this caveat. And it's like repairing after a war. Like, all right, yeah, I'm going to take some money.
Yeah.
And we also, like the U.S. just also definitely wanted a stronger hold in Asia, which is why we continued to push it.
We are at an hour.
Oh, all right.
Isn't that crazy? But I do want to keep going.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Because what I want to talk about is you travel. And then I know you end up in Russia. Yeah. And then because those are the three things that I want to talk about before we close is Russia, how you end up in Canada, and comedy.
Word. All right. Well, yeah, let's jump to Russia. I fucking the same friend who I had moved to China and Korea with was living in Russia.
Okay.
He had been there for like 2 years.
And who was this person? Like, what was their background?
He's a white dude from the States.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, we met during college. We met at a random ass job, but hit it off. And like, he's also a writer. And so like we both knew that we wanted more than what was around us. And so that was what drew us to each other. And like we had a lot of fun like playing off each other. And like I got the idea to go to China and like teach English, and I called him and he was like, yeah, we're fucking doing that. And then a week later he was like, all right, so I'm going.
Yeah.
Like, cause he went before me. It's like I still had to finish a contract with the school I was working at. And so he got out there 6 months before me. So like, yeah, he and I have lived all over the world together, and like he had been there, he was loving it out there. And he had actually found me a job with a company that was promoting cryptocurrencies. Okay. Out of St. Petersburg. And so like he was,
why does that all track?
Right. He was copywriting for them. And like I had always like, he and I met doing sales. And so like I'd always known how to sell shit, and so they brought me on as their sales team. But the thing was, they didn't really know what the fuck they were selling. Yeah. Like they were just like, we sell marketing services. And I was like, cool. What are those? Yeah. How do you do them? What am I supposed to tell? Like, I just tell people we sell marketing services and they're supposed to sign on the dotted line. So like that was doomed. Okay. But it was a perfect excuse to get out there. Yes. And so I worked for them for about 3 months before I left and like actually moved to St. Petersburg. And get there, and about like a month after I get there, I quit. Okay. Like, yeah, I'm done. Like, fuck it. Like, I'm already here. Like, it doesn't matter. And while I was there, like I'd already started doing comedy. I was 3 years in at that point. Okay.
And then let's just do it. How and why did you want to get into comedy? Did you always want to do comedy?
Well, I had always liked comedy. But like I didn't know how one got into comedy. Because like,
Yes.
growing up in a small town, you're just like, oh no, the fuck, wow, there's nothing.
Yes.
Where I'm at, like, so it's like I don't even know how you start, and so it was in Beijing that I started.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. I had started when I'd like gotten back to Beijing, and it was actually because like a friend of mine, she was a mic comic, and she Kyrie Gray, she helped me write my first set.
Okay.
And like I thought she was hilarious, and so she was like, "You're pretty funny. You should try it." I was
Yeah.
like, all right. So she helped me write my first set. It was like a whole like story because I didn't know how to I didn't understand jokes. I was just like, I know I can do a funny story.
Yes.
And so I did that, and she helped me punch it up. And she was supposed to be there the night I first did it, and then there was a massive rainstorm that like flooded a bunch of the city, and so like there was no show that night, and she was leaving 2 days later. And so I was like, well, fuck it. Ended up doing it the next week. Loved it.
Yeah.
New addiction.
Yes.
Yeah, haven't stopped since. And so like I was there, I was hitting that mic every week, they were doing a couple book shows like out there, which was a lot of fun. And then like I kept going when I went to Prague. I was doing shows out there. I was helping a friend who now she owns her own club in Prague. So if you ever want to go do a show out there, I got connections there.
Nice.
Christina, she's fucking dope. But she had like just started a show. And so like she was just like, oh, trying to find like, English comedians to like do the show. And I was like, I will be here every week.
Yeah.
Like I am always, and I was there constantly. And like I would host every once in a while when she didn't want to. And like, so that was when I first started getting hosting experience. And then flash forward to like St. Petersburg. I'm there doing shows. Like, well, I'm trying to find shows, and like there isn't much. And like I find this one show, and like it happens to be like the first one. I get to this place, and like buildings in St. Petersburg, I wasn't really used to them, and so I'm like, I don't even know how the fuck to get into the bar. Like it was a basement bar, and like I could see the show happening. I could see it. I could see like an audience, and I could see people laughing, but I couldn't figure out how to get inside. Like I'm running all around this building trying to figure out how to get inside.
That's so funny.
And like right as the show ends, like somebody comes out of a door, and I'm like, like I run in. And I catch the end of it, and like I meet the producer, and she was really cool. A friend of mine, Allie Weinstein. She's still out in Russia, but yeah, she was determined to start an English club there.
Yeah,
and so I was like, fuck it. Like,
yeah,
I'll
I'm there.
help.
Yeah,
like I'll do whatever I can, and like so because like I'd always been kind of in marketing and sales. I was like, I know how to get people talking about a thing to a thing, and especially then because like I was out 5 nights out of the week anyway, and like that used to be how I would get my audience to shows. Like I'd just be out, we'd be talking, having a conversation. What are you doing Friday? You should come check out my show. It's free. Just come check it out. Like you're not doing anything. Come check it out. Like bring some friends. Like it's whatever. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Like that's how I would pack a room. And so like that's how we initially started like getting an audience and getting a bit of a following. And like we were doing a weekly mic for a bit and starting to do like a couple better like booked paid shows every once in a while, and. Yeah, that kept rolling, and I mean the club was still going even after the war began. It seems to have kind of fallen off a bit now.
That is the most comedy shit I've ever heard. Right, even when there's a war, they're still running the mic.
Yeah, well, and that's funny because like my friends in Moscow, they're still doing their shows.
Yeah,
like they're like because I was messaging with one the other day. I was like, yo, how are shows right now? He's like, dude, audiences are laughing at everything. It's like, well, because there's just such high tension constantly.
Yeah,
like
it's the ultimate
they're just
release.
Looking for their break however they can. Yeah, and so it's nice for them because they're like it's like shooting fish in a barrel. But it's like you also know that much of what you're talking about is really not going to translate. Like, and first off, you're not going to be able to travel with it anyway.
Yes.
So like you're not like it's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to do anything with it. Like, but yeah, it's crazy.
And how do you end up in Canada?
So here, I ended up following my partner,
who you met in Russia.
Yeah. Looks like we met at a show I was hosting. I was hosting a Christmas comedy show in St. Petersburg, and like I was wearing a Santa hat. It was fun, and like she was sitting front row, and like lock eyes while hosting, and like we started talking after the show, hit it off immediately.
Nice.
And so, like, we start talking, and she like lays it on me, in the first couple of days of us hanging out, that she's planning to move to Canada.
Okay.
And at this point, right, like I had left. It was like 3 years before that where I was like, I'm not moving back to North America.
Oh,
for
wow.
a decade. I'm like, I'm not gonna do it.
Okay.
And then like 3 years in, meet her, and she's like, I'm moving back to Canada. I'm moving to Canada, and I'm like, all right, well, it's like not America, so I'll take it. And like the good caveat is like, because I work online for my main source of income, like I could just come and go, so it doesn't really matter. And then like, yeah, everything else I've been involved in here is just like through companies and stuff. So like it's fine. But yeah, so like she was just like, yeah, I'm moving, and I'm like, all right. And like it was initially the premise for this isn't gonna be serious.
Yeah.
Which is how everything serious starts. Like,
yeah, of course.
So we had a lot of fun, and we were just like, it came like she thought it was going to take over a year for her to get it.
Yeah.
But they fast tracked it, and like she got it within like 9 months. And so we're both like, oh, okay. Like how for serial are we?
Yeah.
And
okay.
then like she was like, well, I got to like book a date, and like, this is when we're going to leave, and like starting to book flights and stuff. And I'm like, so like, could I come?
Yeah.
And she was like, I didn't know if I could ask or whatever. And so like we were just like, all right, cool.
And what year would have been when you came?
We got here in 19.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So like she got here in June of 19. I got here in August.
Oh. So you got to have a nice few months before the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, we had like a real nice few months because like we landed, things were going great. Like I was. At that point, I was planning a tour, and like we ended up doing a tour together, Yulia and I, through 10 cities in Europe, ultimately finishing in Novosibirsk. That was our last show, which I'm still like, I'm not sure if we were the first English comedy show in Novosibirsk.
Okay. I don't even know where that is.
Yeah, it's the middle of Siberia. It's like it's the capital of Siberia, basically. And like that's Yulia's from out there, so it's like we were going to visit her family.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, like doing all that. And like we had a real whirlwind of like, because we were just like, yeah, we'll be bouncing in and out, like, it's whatever, it's like, and that was like our first be like, yeah, we're gonna be traveling all the time, like,
yeah.
And then pandemic, and it's just like, well, shit, we ain't going nowhere.
So when you get to Canada, it's the like end of 2019. At what point do you start to get yourself into the comedy scene here?
Oh, I mean, as soon as I landed, like the first weekend we were walking around, I ran into Brandon Sobel.
Oh, amazing.
Like he was barking for the corner.
Yes, okay.
And so I was like, oh shit, like this is a club. He's like, yeah, like we got a show going on. And I'm like, well, like this is going to be the at least best first introduction.
Yeah, of course.
At least I see where one club is, and I get to meet some comics in the city. So like he was the first dude I met on the scene. But like he wasn't really a micer, so he didn't really have much information for like where mics were, and shit like that. But yeah, so like I met him, and then I started trying to get on like all the Facebook stuff, because like back then in 2019, everything was on one Facebook group. And
yeah, okay.
Like, if you weren't in that one Facebook group, you didn't know where shit was.
Which almost makes it's almost worse then. Like at least there's
so much worse then.
Well, no, I feel like if it's just in one place, then you know where it's all there. Whereas now there's like 5 groups.
I mean, yeah, like everything's overspread, but like that one place, and like anybody who was in it for a long time will tell you it was fucking toxic.
Okay.
Because like it wasn't just people sharing where mics and shows were.
Oh.
It was people airing laundry for the whole scene.
I've always been told that, and like it's crazy because you were only in it for like a few months,
brief second,
and I've always been told, especially pre-pandemic and even longer further back, how like the scene was really mean.
Yeah. Well, it was very infighty, very toxic, and like that was the thing where it was like, I mean, every comedy scene is cliquey to an extent because friends hang out with friends. Like, it's just like you're gonna make friends, whatever. But like, it did seem where it was like there were crews here. And like, not to say that like that's completely gone because now I'm the head of a crew here.
Yeah.
but we're not. It was definitely different because like it felt like it was a lot more malice, and like my differentiation in the scene now is more of like I just don't want I don't want your like certain mean-spirited nature to infest my space.
Yes.
Which is what like my stance is. But like I don't have like an actual issue with most people. I don't have the bandwidth to care.
Yeah.
Like,
I want to. That leads me to ask two questions, which is, and I think I'll go with the. Is there a disadvantage to not being in a crew? Because I feel like I'm not really in one.
Yeah, and I mean,
like, not that I don't have friends,
yes.
but I don't have anybody that like I roll with that's like we're invested into a singular purpose of comedy together. I don't have that.
Yeah, no, and that's. I mean, it is definitely beneficial because, like, I mean, and like you know, this is kind of about comedy. Period. Like there are classes to it, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, it's not like necessarily like a graduating class, but you do kind of all progress. You know, and like it's usually like your crew is usually the people you progress with, and so the benefits of it is another comic is going to get you more shows than another producer will.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Because like if a comic is being recruited to be on a show and they're like, yo, or like say I'm being asked to be on a show, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we want you to do a show up in Peterborough. You can pick a driver, and it's like, all right, like you're one of the first 3 drivers I'm gonna think of.
Yes.
So it's like I'm gonna like call you, and that's a spot you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, right?
Yeah, I mean, dude, the advantages of having a car.
Yeah, they're huge. Well, like, yeah, because there were a couple comics where like I would get booked on shit out of town, and I'd just be like, yeah, come with me.
Yeah.
Like, and they like. There were a couple people that like they were just getting booked because I was getting booked.
Yeah,
like,
hey.
And like that's the thing. It's like that's what your crew does for you. They give you a little more opportunity in that light. But as far as like actually growing as like an artist, it can go both ways because you can kind of get stuck in a cipher and feel like you're doing better than you are and not put as much work in as you should be and rest on your laurels a lot more because your friends are telling you you're funny and you're kind of now ignoring your craft.
Well, and then there's the other part of it, which is that whatever shit they get into spills on you.
Yeah.
Right? But there is definitely guilt by association.
Oh, yeah. Which is why I keep my circles small.
Yeah. What led you to want to start your own club?
I mean, honestly, like I love producing, mainly because I love control. The thing is like there's no better way to get stage time than doing your own shows.
Yeah.
And I've known that for a while because like that's what like I was helping start the whole thing in St. Petersburg, and like I was running those shows, and that gave me an opportunity to run other shows there because like one show I was doing there for a little while was the No Mic Open Mic, where like we were just in somebody's living room, everybody was just chilling, there was no mic. People would just get up and like you could do like a 10-minute bit, you could tell a story, you could do poetry, and so. But like that was like, all right, I get to host it, I get to do as much time as I want, and like that, because like everything you want to master, comes down to when are you going to get those 10,000 hours?
Yeah, yeah,
and so producing allows you to get more time.
Yes.
Right? Like not only do you get to control who's on the show and like what the vibe of the show is, but you get to get more time. You get to control how much time you get. Right? And so that was what I initially started producing for, and like being able to give people opportunities and put more people that I thought should be getting booked on shows. And like one of my things when we first started producing here was like I saw that there were so many shows where it's just 5 straight white dudes and a token.
Yeah.
And so like my whole thing was to do the exact opposite of that with my shows.
Okay.
And people took notice because people would be like, why won't you book me? Why won't you? I'm like, because there's only one spot for you.
Yeah.
Like, you've just got to wait, bro.
Yeah.
Like you don't remember doing that to me months ago?
Yeah.
So this is where we're at. And like, and so the opportunity, cause like I was content just continuing to produce. And then the opportunity to start the club presented itself. And I was like, there's going to be nothing like that. Like, because then that is full control of the space, full control of the vibe. And like, I basically get to create our own little corner in the scene. And so I was like, I basically get to do what I was doing and trying to force more diversity into the scene, or at least like more lineups, and make it a more common thing. So people aren't like, oh, it's a black show. It's like, no, it's just a show.
Yeah. Yeah. Which you would think would be the case for a city like Toronto.
Yeah.
You know?
But like most old arts in North America, it's an old white boys club.
Gotcha.
So it's just like,
sorry.
I mean, you know, you're at least new to the club, so it's like,
yeah, that's the thing. I didn't do anything to anyone.
Yeah. It's like you just got into the club looking like you've been here for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I probably speak for a lot of people that like there's an infinite amount of appreciation and gratitude for the club you started, because there is nothing like it. There is like, it's a place where like, I don't know, it's the best. It is honestly just like when the lab is hot, there's nothing like it. Nowhere. Yeah. Any club.
I mean, yeah. Like I that little room, it's the best. And like, I mean, honestly, a lot of the vibe being so great is attributed to the comics who keep coming back.
Yeah.
Like, cause you know, it's who chooses to be in the room that really makes the space. And like, everybody buying into the community's better when we treat each other better.
Yes.
Like, because like, I want the club to be a great hang. I want people to know that they're safe here, and like, they are appreciated and seen, and like, their voice matters.
Yeah.
And so when everybody buys into that and everybody accepts that there's no real hierarchy in this place, then everybody just has more fun.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, because like, audiences love it, and people keep coming back because they see comics are having fun, and like, comics keep coming back because audiences having fun, and it's just a beautiful cycle that is, you know, going very rapidly toward its second year, which is fucking great. Like, I count it as a true blessing to have.
Yeah. I feel like that was the perfect way to end this podcast.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Yeah. Thanks again for coming out, man. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. Like, I don't know where I'd be. It's just nice knowing that I got a friend out there.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
anyway,
it's good to have you in the scene. It's fucking, this was fun.
Yeah.
Keep watching the podcast and shit.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks again, buddy.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.